Hello my gorgeous makeup loving friends. Today is a slightly different video and I think it might be a little bit of a series. The reason for that is I have a lot to talk about here and I don't think I can fit it all into one video. So hence it's going to be the first of several parts, and I'd love to have your contributions down below. Tell me what you guys think. But I don't know if you've noticed, the makeup and beauty landscape has changed considerably in the last, we'll say, 3 to 5 years. We have seen the incredible rise and the astronomical falls of quite a few brands. Some were a surprise, some not so much. But today's video is about the makeup and beauty brands that I feel we may see an end to. If not in the next year, definitely in the foreseeable future. So if that sounds like something that you are interested in, then do please keep on watching. Now I want to make it super clear that the brands that I am talking about, I don't actually hold any sort of a grudge against. I'm not like, grr, arg. These are my own opinions. Feel free to disagree. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But these are just my opinions and sheer conjecture and speculation. Ain't that fun? The very first one that I wanted to talk about is Buxom. Yeah, do you remember Buxom Beauty? They're still actually, believe it or not, a thing. Now they kind of rose to fame with their plump line lip liners. And that's right, I actually have one of them here. And it was quite a big chunky lip liner which had like a little bit of a brush at the very end. That's right, I'm doing the YouTube thing of showing you the lip liner. But look at how big and chunky that lip liner was. But it was quite popular at the time. You got a big amount of product from them. I've definitely kept this longer than I probably should have. I love how these say 18 months and I'm like, what is time? Who knows? Now, the thing is, I don't even know where I would buy this now if I wanted to get it. Buxom used to be distributed by Debenhams here in Ireland and also Debenhams in the UK. If you've been following any sort of makeup and beauty news, you may have noticed that Debenhams went into closure during the pandemic. The pandemic affected an awful lot of businesses and Debenhams just happened to be one of them. So Buxom, I think, is going to fail partly because it's very difficult to actually find them. So for instance, Cult Beauty, Beauty Bay, Boots, etc. The big distributors here don't actually stock these. So that's part of why I think we might see a little bit of an end to them. The other reason as to why I think we might see a little bit of an end to them is obviously every single week I do releases and rants and I talk about the new makeup releases that you guys tag me in. So I've noticed A, hasn't been an awful lot of releases from Buxom of late, and B, anything that is released, it doesn't generate an awful lot of interest. I consume what can only be described as a frightening amount of social media and makeup and beauty content, and I actually can't remember the last time that I saw somebody actually using a Buxom product. Yeah, I feel like they faded a little bit into obscurity to the point that I forgot that they were actually a brand. I know, I don't know if they're stocked on Sephora UK or what the story is, but for me, I feel like Buxom is on the way out. Kind of sucks. I don't ever want to see the end of any sort of an industry or business because these have really big real life ramifications for people. But for me, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if I heard in the next couple of months that they were gone. I feel like I'm going to get an awful lot of flack for this next one because I actually really like this brand as well and I wouldn't like to see it go, but again, wouldn't be surprised if it did, and that is Dose of Colours. Now hear me out, the reason why I think it might be going is it's not really easy to find here either. Used to be stocked on Beauty Bay, but now very difficult to find anything Dose of Colours. Beauty Bay about maybe a year and a half ago started to sell off an awful lot of the Dose of Colours stuff that they actually had. Yeah, so very difficult to actually find. The next thing I will say is we are currently on the trend of going towards more like satiny, glossy lips at the moment, and that's not really what Dose of Colours is actually known for. The thing that they are most known for is their liquid lipsticks, and I've gotta say, their liquid lipsticks are spectacular. I really like them. They're definitely in my top 5. But the thing is, because they're kind of going out of fashion in that sense, I kind of can't see, unless they kind of come out with a totally new formula and do like a glossy lip, like some sort of a satiny thing, I just feel like they're not as relevant as they once were. Again, I don't see an awful lot of releases from this particular brand either, you know? And the next thing I will also say is, to be a really consistent, profitable brand, you have to have the makeup items that people will come back and repeat buy. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have really, really successful eyeshadow palettes. I don't know about you. I have a massive makeup collection, but never in my life, well, actually, no, that's a lie. It's very rare that I go and I buy a duplicate of an eyeshadow palette that I already have. You know, I've never actually ended up replacing it. So a lot of brands, the money that they make isn't necessarily in things like eyeshadows. The money that they make are in things that we have to replace very frequently. The concealers, the foundations, mascaras. And as it stands, yes, Dose of Colours does have a concealer and a foundation, but it's not one that I tend to hear an awful lot about. If anything, I heard quite a few negative reviews. So when you think about it, and the fact that those would be this sort of big ticket items that people would continue to repurchase, like for instance, if you look at Dior, they don't do great eyeshadow palettes, let's be 100% honest, but the big items that they would do would be like the foundation and the concealer, and they are spectacular, and that's why they are still in business. So for me, I feel like Dose of Colours would need to go back to the drawing board in terms of the foundation and really do something on that. I also think they need to extend those glossy lips, maybe bring in a mascara. I know I don't personally care about mascara, but they tend to be the ones that people kind of repurchase. Same with like false lashes, etc. So I think there's room for Dose of Colours to kind of save themselves, and it doesn't have to be eyeshadow. But again, I haven't seen them do eyeshadow in a really, really long time. The last eyeshadow palette that I kind of saw from them were those little 5-pan palettes, and I don't remember them doing that well. I actually got one but never ended up properly playing with it because it was just a bit like underwhelming, which was a bit disappointing when you consider the highs of the Friendication palette. Like, that was spectacular. This next one on the chopping block, I don't think the brand will fully go, right? Because like many brands, they now have two divisions. One is beauty and one is skincare. I feel like their skincare is going to be totally fine. They tend to do really, really well on that. I actually think the bit where they're going to fall down is their makeup, and that is Pixie Beauty. So why do I think that? I don't know if anyone has gone to TK Maxx, aka TJ Maxx, of late. There has been a hell of a lot of Pixie stuff, and I will also say quite a few of their skincare things as well, which has kind of surprised me. So when you see quite a few elements of a brand in TK Maxx, it is kind of indicative that they aren't doing that well. I mean, for instance, we saw a lot of Morphe stuff coming into TK Maxx prior to their downfall. It kind of like signals the end of an era, in my opinion. But you know, we can totally choose to disagree on these things. I will also say, when I go onto Boots, for example, a lot of Pixie stuff tend to be on clearance. Their stuff kind of is on like 60% off, sometimes 50% off, so it does make me kind of wonder what the story is. Now, when it actually comes to their makeup line, I actually don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like, in terms of how it performs, I actually think it does really, really well. The problem is we have such a saturated market that it's very difficult for anything to actually stand out. Where I think Pixie does really, really well are actually their highlighters. I think they are very, very pretty, but I have seen a lot of those in TK Maxx. They're those glowy gossamer powders, and I think they're very, very pretty. Their eyeshadow palettes tend to all look exactly the same. I'm gonna say it. They just do. They're all kind of pinky, purpley, neutrally tones, and there's nothing wildly interesting about them. They did try to come out with some liquid glittery eyeshadows around about the time that Stila was like really, really big on those, and Pixie kind of did okay on those. But it feels like Pixie, in terms of their makeup, is constantly trying to chase trends, and that's very, very difficult. Again, they don't have like any sort of repurchasable products. I don't know of any concealer, foundations, mascaras. It's very, very difficult, for instance, to pan a highlighter. They have some blushes, but again, you know, very, very difficult to pan a blush. I've panned one blush in my entire life. Again, take that with a pinch of salt. I have a disgusting collection. Where Pixie, I think, might need to change is, I mean, they already have their skincare line and they do pretty okay on that. Again, I have some question marks on that. Might it be that they're selling off some of that because the beauty line is kind of dragging them down a little bit? I don't know. But they have their skincare line, and I hate to say it, but makeup that's infused with skincare is a thing. I know, it's gimmicky, it's silly, whatever, but people do tend to respond to that. I mean, the fact that they have the makeup section and they have the skincare collection, they're known for their skincare. Why not incorporate the two? You know, have some sort of like foundation that has skincare loving ingredients, have, I don't know, blushes with hyaluronic acid. I know, I hate myself for saying that, but I feel like a gimmick like that might work okay for them. I also feel like maybe in terms of their PR, they aren't really kind of getting out there to probably the people that they need to, you know, so they need to maybe think about who they're sending PR out to. I don't want to say send it to the big TikTokers, but maybe that might be an idea. They have a tendency to sell shit out that shouldn't be sold out. I'm just saying. I'd be sad to see Pixie makeup go, because I think they do have some really, really good elements. Like I said, those highlighters are so pretty and I feel like nobody really talks about them. But other than that, there's nothing that I would really go back and repurchase. Like if they kind of left my collection, I'd be like, okay, I probably wouldn't actually notice it. So yeah, this is a brand that we've definitely seen a rise and a fall to, and possibly a rise again. And I think where I said that Pixie Beauty are struggling in terms of their PR stuff, I think that this brand has gone kind of too far the other way and has probably embedded themselves too much in social media and probably telling influencers what to say about their products. Yeah, that's KVD Beauty, in case you're wondering. So obviously KVD Beauty probably had its height back in the day when it was run by Kat Von D, or as I like to think of her, Kat Von Disease. And as much as I dislike her as a person and her overall thing, anti-Semitism, all that sort of thing, gives me the ick, she did put together some really interesting products. The Shade and Light Contour Powder Palette, you could not move. Everyone had one of those. It was like the repurchasable thing. They even did like the refills at one point, which by the way are very, very difficult to find these days. But that was a really, really smart product. They had the pomades, which everyone really, really enjoyed. The Lock-It foundation, the eyeshadow palettes. My goodness, I don't know about you, but I remember when the Vida Loca, that circular palette, kind of was out, and that was the thing. Everyone wanted it. I remember I kind of was just coming into makeup when that had sold out, and people were like selling it on eBay for crazy amounts of money because it was so desirable and so wanted. She put together really genuinely interesting color stories at a time where those color stories just didn't exist. So I'm not saying that, you know, they should come out with these color stories again, because we kind of have a pretty big market at this particular point. But obviously where it all started to go wrong for the brand was because it was named after Kat Von D. And I think this is a massive issue with brands in general that are run by influencers. They shouldn't name their brand after themselves, because it becomes very, very difficult to disentangle the product from the influencer. And as soon as the influencer gets into trouble, people start to boycott the products. So obviously she got into trouble for like anti-Semitism, for being anti-vax and lots of other things. Just a generally not so great time. So we started to see that that fell, and overall then the brand started to kind of kick her out, and she took a massive backseat and left the company. Now when she left the company, people then were like, oh, we can buy from them again. But it was really weird, because when you bought components or things from KVD Beauty, which it was then renamed, it still had all the Kat Von D logos on them. I think some of them still do, actually, for a lot of like the existing or older products. So the fact that they were still kind of putting her name on that, I mean, yes, they were trying to use the packaging that they had, but would you not think about maybe changing that a little bit? And that is part of why I'm kind of thinking maybe there were some money problems. If you really want to distance yourself from this person that has caused a big chunk of the issue in the product, would you not try and omit their name completely? That's just my question there. The next part of why I think they aren't doing that great is, again, we saw that the palettes used to do really, really well. I can't remember the last sort of palette that they came out with that was generally kind of interesting. They are doing the recyclable things, which I love, but it was all very like mid-toned and boring. Their Christmas palette actually looked semi-interesting, bought that, have yet to try it. I know, comment down below if you want me to try it. But in general, the stuff that they were known for kind of went. They even reformulated their lipsticks, and the liquid lipsticks just aren't quite the same. It isn't as nice as it once used to be. The next big thing that I think that they went very wrong in was they obviously at one point kind of went to all the influencers. Here's our Good Apple Balm foundation. You tell everyone that this is so full coverage and act like you've never seen, you know, a full coverage like foundation before. We all have. But like people were acting like it had changed their lives. They're like, oh my God. So obviously that made a lot of people kind of be like, oh, okay, well, I'll go and buy it. So the sale went up massively at that particular point, and everyone was like, must get this, must try it, must make a TikTok, must do the social media. And ploys like this work really, really well in the short term. We've seen that with Maybelline, etc., that they run these sort of campaigns and their stuff sells out. But what happens long term? I never see anybody use the Good Apple Balm foundation. Anytime I talk about it with anyone, they're like, oh my God, it's trash. So I feel like that didn't do well. I generally see that it's on sale on Boots. Like it's usually like a little bit off. Then the next thing was obviously that terrible Good Apple Serum foundation, which I tried and fucking hated. I loathed that so much. Again, that was all over TikTok and people being like, oh my God, it's the most amazing foundation that I've ever tried. Blah, 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 blah. And it didn't. It wasn't great. It didn't work for me. I know it works for some people. But I actually went and I returned that. And I know a few people have returned that. So the bottom line is that brand is going to lose money on things like that. So I feel like they just can't possibly survive when they're investing that much money into influencing so that people will go and buy the things, but then they can return them. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be able to return bad products, but I'm saying maybe think about your formulation. Their Lock-It foundation was much beloved. So like maybe have a little look at that, you know? That one's totally fine. The last one that I'm actually going to talk about today is a celebrity-owned brand. And part of why I think that this may come to an end is not anything to do with the quality of the brand. I actually haven't tried it, but I've heard some good things from some people. They've said that things like the concealers are some of their faves, but I think that it might be in trouble because of the info that came out from Forma. And in case you haven't figured it out, this is Ariana Grande's r.e.m. Beauty. So why I think this might actually be in trouble was Forma, when it existed, had taken in r.e.m. Beauty, which is owned by Ariana. They just had a stake in it and they pumped an awful lot of money into r.e.m. Beauty and they thought that they were going to get a major return on investment on that, but they actually didn't. And that is part of what kind of led to the closure of Forma and the subsequent downfall of Morphe. And here's the thing, we are in a beauty landscape where people are very, very likely to be influenced. It happens all the time. I've been influenced, you've been influenced, we've all been influenced. And I think if we have a brand that is run by a celebrity and that isn't doing well, that may be indicative of the products themselves maybe not lining up with the person themselves. Like if it becomes very, very difficult for you to kind of go, oh, I see that Ariana probably wouldn't wear this. If we juxtapose that against Fenty Beauty by Rihanna, we saw Rihanna actually using her stuff at the Super Bowl. People were like, oh my God, what is she using? Like she was using like her blotting, blurring powder. But I've never seen Ariana actually use the products that she is selling as part of her makeup line. And I think she was right to call it r.e.m. Beauty rather than having anything to do with Ariana Grande. Again, that can work well in the short term, but can kind of be a bit of a flop in the long term. So I think she was right in that sense. I think though she needs to kind of bring it back a little bit and kind of maybe go into things like she's known for her eyeliner. Why not do a set of eyeliners and just, I mean, she's done like little TikToks and stuff where she's like, look at how quickly I do my eyeliner. And she could be like, I'm using my one. Do a Jaclyn Hill and be like, hey, look at my products that I make, and you could buy them, and you too could be like me. So I think in general the products just didn't seem to mesh with what we knew of Ariana Grande, and because it didn't sell out that well when she had the backing of Forma, you could go into Morphe stores and get them. That seemed really odd to me. Now I think it might kind of make a little bit of a comeback because I think everyone was so surprised with Forma closing, and knowing that REM Beauty is part of that, people may subsequently go out and buy these particular things like concealers, etc. I know that some people really enjoy the concealers. And like I said before, if you've good repurchasable products, you might actually do pretty okay as a brand, you know? But I think they might be okay. I think this is a very like 50-50. This could go one way or the other. If the public kind of gets behind Ariana and decides, yeah, we know that you had a tougher format, that didn't really work out very well, we're here to support you, we want to make sure that this brand doesn't sink, it doesn't go under, I think they might be okay. Like, she's being stocked at Sephora at the moment. That's a really big deal. However, Sephora will take on X number of units and they'll buy them from you. But if they don't sell out, like, you have to pay for that. You have to buy your stock back. So that could be a little bit of a curse for them later on if this doesn't perform very, very well. So I don't know, I'm reserving judgment on this, but again, if you told me in 2-3 years time that REM Beauty was gone, kind of wouldn't be that surprised. But my friends, that is it for this particular video. As I said, I have a lot of brands that I actually think are on the way out, and I think I might make this into a little bit of a series, but I really want to hear your guys' thoughts as well. So if you want me to talk about any other particular brands, put them down below. Tell me what you guys think. What are your reasons for thinking that brands might be going? What do you think might actually save them? That's it though. That's the end of this particular video. If you haven't already subscribed, then please do, and turn on that notification bell so you can see more of these videos and lots of other videos that I happen to do over on this channel. But as always, do please share, because sharing is caring, except of course for STDs, in which case, you know, just wrap it up, don't be gross. But that's it, that is the end of the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.